Hello, welcome to Museum Moments with the Jewish Museum Milwaukee. My name is Ellie Gettinger, and I'm the Education Director at the Jewish Museum. Today, we are talking Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is central to Jewish practice and actually is central to the way that we tell our story at Jewish Museum Milwaukee. It's the last section of our permanent exhibit. And it's been the pillar that we've been exploring throughout the run of our current show, Luba Lukova Designing Justice. This Thursday, we have an opportunity to talk about kind of the way that Jews enact social justice and Tikkun Olam through the lens of Ruth Messenger, who's a longtime leader, the former director of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS. But today, I wanted to get into the complexity of some of these thinkings and how this became part of Jewish tradition practice and what Tikkun Olam means and how it works within our Jewish world. So I'm delighted to be joined by Rabbi Tiferet Berenbaum, who is the Rabbi of Congregational Learning and Programming at Temple Beth Zion in Brookline, Massachusetts. But for those of you who are Milwaukeeans, you might remember her as the rabbi from Congregation Shir Hadash here in Milwaukee. Welcome to Museum Moments.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
So in thinking about this big topic that we're going to accomplish in a very short time frame, when you say Tikkun Olam, what are we talking about? And where is the kind of not liturgical, but scriptural presence of this concept?
Sure. So I actually did not know this. Well, we don't know anything until we know it. So I'm leaning on this book that I love. It's called Righteous Indignation, Jewish Call for Justice. And one of my teachers wrote an article on what does Tikkun Olam actually mean. That's Rabbi Dr. Jane Kanarek. And she gives us the basis for the term Tikkun Olam. And it turns out it's from the Mishnah. And I'll just read the Mishnah.
Do it.
So this is from like divorce law, and it says at first he, the husband, would convene a court of law in another place and then cancel it, the divorce document. Rabban Gamliel, the elder, decreed that they should not do this because of Tikkun HaOlam, and that's from Gittin 4:2 in the Mishnah. And so in that instance, it's like, what is Tikkun HaOlam? Like, they don't explain it. They just say because of Tikkun HaOlam. And so what that's saying is, like, if a husband wants to get a divorce, he could put together a beit din, give the get, and then cancel the get, and then the wife wouldn't even know, and she'd go about her life thinking that she was divorced, and then she'd get married, and then it turns out she's married twice, and it's like it would cause chaos in her life. So Rabban Gamliel's like, no, we don't do that because of Tikkun HaOlam. And so in that instance, we understand that this concept has something to do with fairness, something to do with justice, and something to do with our actions having an effect on the lives of other people.
Yeah. In terms of just a pure translation here, though, because I did not do that, and now that we're throwing around Hebrew words, we should probably translate them. Sure. Tikkun HaOlam is repairing the world.
So
what would you frame that as?
So I think in this instance, Tikkun HaOlam literally means the fixed nature of the world. In this case, in this instance from the Mishnah, the way I'm understanding it, because what they seem to be saying is, like, the way the world works is, and like, the tikkun, the set nature of the world is that, like, if you do something, it's going to have an effect on someone else's life, right? Like, in the way, like, that's not how we're intending to act. But we'll get to the healing part, because I think that, that comes from the mystical additions later on. The second example from the Mishnah, also from Gittin, says, one does not redeem captives for more than their worth because of Tikkun HaOlam. And again, this is slightly different because we say Tikkun Olam, but, it's more grammatically proper. I don't even know if that's grammatically proper, but it's more grammatically proper to say Tikkun HaOlam, right? Like the state of the world or fixing the world, however we define Tikkun Olam. It continues, one does not help captives to escape because of Tikkun HaOlam. And Rabban Shimon, the son of Gamliel, says because of the decree of captives. So then, the Gemara wonders, like, well, what's that about? Like, it seems like it'd be a good thing. It seems like it would be.
Now we're into from divorce to freeing hostages, basically.
Yes, still in the same context.
Yeah.
But yeah, right? And it seems like that would be a good thing, right? You have hostages, you want to free them. Why wouldn't we do that, right? So the Gemara explains that, okay, the first thing is like you don't want to redeem them for more than they're worth. Well, if all of a sudden someone's kidnapped and they're, the ransom is like much more, then that's just going to encourage people to keep kidnapping people. And, so we don't pay more than it's worth. It's kind of like, I don't know if it's exactly similar to like, we don't negotiate with terrorists, but it's like the same kind of thing.
You don't want to promote that kind of lifestyle. So in this case, there's almost this sense of, justice in the sense of kind of law and justice, as opposed to justice in the sense of kind of touchy-feely, lets everyone have equity.
Yes. And the other case too, it's like halachically you cannot do this because of Tikkun Olam. It's legal precedence.
How do we get to this kind of more spiritual, this more, let's go with the kind of parlance of touchy-feely sense of Tikkun Olam? How do you get from this is about divorces and captives, which some people would say are very connected, to the sense of purpose in the universe?
Yeah. So it is about the concept of justice, right? In a legal sense. Well, that doesn't necessarily speak to everyone's soul, right? And when we look at it this way, like what Tikkun in itself has that double meaning of being like fixed and set, right? We talk about like letaken et haolam, right? To like set the world or to fix or repair the world. So Tikkun also means, like we just said, repairing or healing. Right. So like, the question then is, what are we repairing? Right. And that's when the rabbis come in and say, oh, that's a great question. Let me explain. And they tell us the story of the creation and the breaking of the shards, and how when God first created, when God created an iteration of the world, this iteration of the world, God was pouring God's self into these vessels that were, holding the world. But then there was just too much godliness in the vessel and it broke, and all of the shards of the vessels spread out all over the world, and they're hidden. And our job is to letaken et haolam, right? Is to repair the brokenness in the world. And so that's where we get this like idea of Tikkun Olam as, the social justice aspect that we know today. But I think, both understandings of it are valid, and both put the responsibility on us to do something, right? Because, when we look at the first two instances from the Mishnah, we understand, like, if you're going to do this to your wife, her life is going to look like this. And if you're going to redeem captives or pay more, then that's just going to encourage more behavior. Or, if you help captives escape, then the next set of captives are going to be treated even more badly. So we're learning that every action that we take, I mean, we've learned this before, has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So like it has an effect on the world. And so that gives us pause to recognize, one, our power, but also when we think about it from the quote touchy-feely place, then we understand that this is that we have the power to affect the injustices and the bad things that we see. And because every single action has an effect, it doesn't matter if it's, standing up for legislative change, right, which has a big, massive effect and touches a lot of lives, or doing one small act with one individual person, because that also can change a life. And like in our tradition, we say, if you save one life, it's like you save a whole world, right? So we don't know the effect, the ripple effect of what any of these actions will do.
But within the sense, the context of letakenet, I'm killing it. Ha'olam. That the sense is that you're pulling these things in with the sense of there is a ripple, and that ripple is important, but it's important to be aware of that ripple. I think that it's not that there's a sense of conscientiousness. You can't just go out and throw yourself into, well, I'm going to fix it all, and I'm not going to, that there is a sense of intention. Would you say? That's where
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because we get that from Pirkei Avot, right? Like we don't have to fix everything. We can't fix everything, right? Like the world the world and its problems existed before we existed. So like it would be such chutzpah to think that we're gonna, in this generation fix everything, right? The best that we can do is create the ripples for the next generations to pick up on.
So we're all riding the waves of our previous generations of people in this current landscape in which I think people are sometimes hard pressed to find those ripples. What are the ways in which you see that enacted on a regular basis that kind of brings a sense of positivity in what can sometimes feel like a dark world?
Yeah. I'm so blessed because in my role, I get to interact with, the whole lifespan at TBZ. And I see it in our adults who are fiercely committed to social justice and social change. And like our synagogue was sitting here empty, and now it's a food pantry, it's for storage, because it's like, why not? Like this is a place that we can serve. But I also see it, and it's not that I expect, but I expect, the adults to do those things, and our teenagers, right? Like our teenagers are involved in the Jewish youth climate movement, and they started it themselves, or they started the Kfutza here themselves. And they're like, we have to take action. We have to find our way to do Tikkun Olam. And not only we have to do something, we have to teach other people. So they're coming to teach in the religious school. They're teaching, the whole congregation next Shabbos. So it's like, oh my goodness, that certainly, gives me hope. And I see that, like, there are shards and we have to pick them up. It's almost like you can't pick up too many because then you might cut yourself, but pick up what you can and you return it back to source.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for offering this kind of broad. I know I asked you for, what is a dissertation within 15 minutes. So I appreciate that. Every time we're kind of condensing this moment. But giving us this broad perspective allows us to kind of understand what's going on in the Jewish world today, how that fits into a continuum of Jewish history and how we're all part of this bigger story. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Have to, as always, thank my supporter, Robin Cohen, who funds these fabulous Jewish Museum moments and has been such a stalwart throughout this pandemic. We'll be continuing our museum moments in the new year. They'll be every Tuesday at 2. So please join us again. If you want to learn more about Jewish Museum Milwaukee, check out jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.